My beloved child. Don't skip. There is a reason these words found you at this exact moment, because the story you are about to hear begins with 9 years of silence, but it does not end there. For 9 long years, someone carried a truth they could not say aloud. 9 years of watching from a distance. 9 years of remembering something everyone else assumed had been forgotten. 9 years of standing beneath bright lights, surrounded by thousands of voices, while one quiet name remained somewhere deeper than all the applause. And tonight, something changed. Stay till the end, because the most important part is not that this person is known by millions. It is not the cameras. It is not the fame. It is not the crowds calling their name. The most important part is the decision they finally made when nobody was watching. Something huge is waiting for you. Imagine a person whose face appears everywhere. Someone who cannot walk into an ordinary room without being recognized. Someone whose life looks extraordinary from the outside, flashing cameras, interviews, crowded events, invitations, beautiful places, people constantly trying to enter their world. Yet behind all of it was a silence nobody understood. There was one subject they avoided. One memory they protected. One chapter they refused to explain. And that chapter was you. Not because you were forgotten. Because remembering you touched something fame could never replace. Don't skip. Because what happened after 9 years is where everything turns. For years, people around this person believed they understood them. They knew the public smile. They knew the carefully chosen words. They knew the confident version presented to the world. But they did not know about those quiet moments after everyone left. They did not know about the nights when the room became still and memories returned. They did not know there was one question this person could never completely answer. What if I had chosen differently? 9 years ago, there had been a moment. Perhaps it looked insignificant to everyone else. A conversation. A glance. A goodbye that lasted 1 second longer than it should have. A moment when 2 people knew there was something between them, yet neither understood how important that something would eventually become. Life moved forward. Or at least, it appeared to. One path became louder. Recognition arrived. Opportunities multiplied. The world started noticing this person. Suddenly everyone wanted something from them. A photograph. A conversation. A collaboration. An invitation. A piece of their attention. But somewhere beneath all that noise remained the memory of someone who had known them before the world became so loud. You. Stay till the end. Because that distinction matters more than you realize. You were not connected to the image. You were connected to the human being underneath it. And somewhere along the journey, that became impossible for them to forget. At first, they tried. They told themselves distance would erase it. Then months became years. New faces appeared. New cities. New achievements. New celebrations. People assumed success would fill every empty place. But success can fill a calendar without filling a heart. Applause can fill an arena without answering a private question. Recognition can place your name everywhere while leaving you wondering whether the one person you remember would recognize who you have become. And that was the strange contradiction this person lived with. The bigger their world became, the more precious certain simple memories became. Your voice. Your honesty. The way you treated them without needing anything. The way you could disagree without pretending. The way you saw imperfections and somehow did not turn those imperfections into weapons. Those memories did not disappear. They matured. Something huge is waiting for you, because 9 years later, the memory stopped behaving like a memory. It became a decision. But before that decision came a moment nobody expected. It happened after another enormous public appearance. Thousands had been cheering. Lights moved across the room. People were celebrating. Everyone around this person believed it had been another perfect night. But after returning to a private room, they did something unusual. They asked everyone to leave. The door closed. Silence entered. And for the first time that evening, there was no performance required. No camera. No audience. No carefully prepared answer. Just one person sitting alone with everything they had achieved. And suddenly, all of it felt strangely distant. Their eyes moved toward a phone lying nearby. For several seconds, they did nothing. Then they picked it up. They searched for something they had promised themselves they would stop searching for. A name. Your name. Don't skip. Because this is where the 9 years begin collapsing into one moment. Their finger hovered over the screen. 9 years of questions came rushing back. Would you remember them? Would you be angry? Had too much time passed? Had your life moved somewhere completely different? Would you think they were reaching out because they were lonely? Would you even believe that after everything, the attention, the opportunities, the people surrounding them, they still remembered? And beneath all those questions was the one they feared most. What if you no longer cared? That question stopped them. The phone lowered. They walked toward the window. Outside, the city glittered beneath them. Somewhere down there, people were still talking about the event. Their name was trending. Photographs were spreading. Messages were arriving every few seconds. But they were thinking about a person who might not even know this moment was happening. You. And then something inside them broke through 9 years of hesitation. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a door finally opening after being locked for too long. They whispered words nobody else heard. I should have told them. Stay till the end. Because those 5 words changed the direction of everything. For 9 years, this person had believed silence was protection. Protection from rejection. Protection from embarrassment. Protection from complicated circumstances. Protection from headlines. Protection from people interfering. Protection from discovering that perhaps the connection had existed only in their imagination. But that night, they understood something different. Silence had not protected them. Silence had simply kept the truth unfinished. And unfinished truth has a strange way of returning. Again. And again. And again. Until someone finally becomes brave enough to face it. The next morning, something happened that surprised even the people closest to them. A trusted person entered the room carrying the usual schedule. Meetings. Calls. Travel arrangements. Commitments. Everything was organized. But the celebrity barely looked at it. Instead, they asked one question. Do you remember the person I told you about years ago? The assistant paused. There had only ever been one person spoken about that way. Yes. Another silence. Then came the words nobody expected. I want to find them. The room changed. Not because finding someone was difficult. For a world-famous person, almost anything could be arranged. The shocking part was that after 9 years of refusing to reopen that chapter, they were finally asking, "Are you sure?" The answer came immediately. Yes. Then another sentence followed. And this one revealed everything. I'm tired of wondering what would have happened if I had been brave. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Because what happened next was not a grand public announcement. There was no dramatic post. No interview. No headline. They wanted this protected. Private. Real. For once, they did not want millions of strangers participating in something that belonged to 2 people. So they began quietly. And during that quiet search, memories started returning with startling clarity. They remembered things you may have forgotten. A sentence you once said casually. A joke nobody else understood. A moment when you encouraged them before success arrived. Perhaps you did not even realize what that encouragement meant. But they remembered. They remembered the version of themselves who existed before everything changed. And they remembered that around you, they had never needed to prove anything. That was rare. Extremely rare. Because fame changes the question behind every interaction. Does this person like me? Or do they like what surrounds me? Do they care? Or are they fascinated? Would they still sit beside me if nobody knew my name? Would they stay if the lights disappeared? Those questions had followed this person for years. But when they remembered you, the questions became quieter. Because you had known something different. You had known the unfinished version. The uncertain version. The person still becoming. And that memory became more valuable with every passing year. Stay till the end, because they were about to discover something about you that they had not expected. The search eventually produced an answer. You had changed too. 9 years had not left you standing still. You had grown. You had endured seasons nobody around them knew about. You had learned things. Lost things. Rebuilt parts of yourself. You were no longer exactly the person from their memory. And strangely, that did not disappoint them. It fascinated them. They wanted to know who you had become. Not just who you had been. That distinction mattered. Because nostalgia can make someone chase the past. But this was becoming something else. This person was not asking, "How do I get the old days back?" They were asking, "Who are they now?" That question changed everything. They started learning small things. Nothing intrusive. Nothing that crossed boundaries. Just enough to understand that life had continued for you too. And the more they discovered, the more serious their expression became. Because somewhere in those 9 years, you had developed something they deeply respected. Strength. Not loud strength. Not the kind that needs everyone to notice. The quiet kind. The kind built when nobody applauds. The kind created by surviving disappointment without becoming cruel. The kind created when life does not follow your preferred timeline, yet you continue walking. That was when they realized they had been wrong about something. They had once believed they needed to become extraordinary before returning. Successful enough. Powerful enough. Certain enough. They thought they needed to have everything figured out. But now, after achieving things their younger self could barely imagine, they understood that none of those achievements answered the question they had carried for 9 years. Could they finally be honest with you? Don't skip. Because the answer arrived sooner than expected. That evening, they sat with two people they trusted more than almost anyone. These were people who had seen behind the public image. People who understood the loneliness hidden inside extraordinary success. One of them asked, "Why now?" The celebrity looked down. For several seconds, there was no answer. Then they said, "Because 9 years is enough." Nobody interrupted. I kept thinking there would be a better time. After the next project. After the next year. After things became calmer. But nothing becomes calmer. Life keeps moving. Then their voice softened. And if I wait another 9 years, I may lose the chance completely. That sentence hung in the room. One of the trusted friends asked another question. What do you actually want from them? This mattered. Because there is a difference between missing someone and choosing someone. A difference between curiosity and commitment. A difference between reopening an old door because you feel lonely and opening it because you finally understand what is on the other side. The celebrity thought carefully. Then answered, I want the chance to know them again. Not ownership. Not expectation. A chance. That was important. Because genuine love does not erase another person's freedom. It does not say, I chose you, therefore you owe me. It says, I chose honesty, and I will respect whatever truth you give me in return. Something huge is waiting for you. Because that was the first sign that this was no longer the same person who disappeared into silence 9 years earlier. Back then, fear had controlled the story. Now maturity was beginning to replace fear. They knew you might say no. They knew your life might have changed. They knew 9 years could not simply be erased because they had finally found courage. And yet, they were willing to face the answer. That was the choice. Not merely choosing you. Choosing vulnerability. Choosing truth. Choosing to step away from the safety of wondering and into the uncertainty of knowing. And then came the message. The first draft was too long. They deleted it. The second sounded too formal. Deleted. The third sounded like something written by a publicist. Deleted immediately. They laughed quietly at themselves. A person capable of speaking before enormous crowds suddenly could not write one message to one person. That is what made the moment so human. The world saw confidence. You awakened honesty. Eventually, they typed something simple. They stared at it. Read it again. Put the phone down. Picked it back up. Walked around the room. Returned. Still did not send it. Don't skip. Because what happened during those next few minutes revealed why the silence had lasted 9 years. Their mind started creating every possible ending. What if you ignored the message? What if you had forgotten? What if you believed they were playing with your emotions? What if someone else already occupied that place in your heart? What if they were too late? The same fears that had ruled them 9 years earlier returned. But something was different now. This time, they recognized fear for what it was. Not prophecy. Not certainty. Fear. And fear was no longer going to write the ending. Their thumb moved toward the screen. Then stopped one final time. They closed their eyes. And remembered the last meaningful moment they had shared with you 9 years ago. The memory was almost painfully clear. There had been something unsaid between you. Something both of you could feel. Perhaps timing had been wrong. Perhaps circumstances were complicated. Perhaps neither of you knew how to name it. But as they replayed that memory, they remembered your expression. And suddenly they understood something they had missed back then. You had been waiting for honesty too. That realization struck deeply. How many years had been lost because two people were afraid to say one truthful thing? 1 year. 3 years. 5. 9. Time does not stop because people are uncertain. And now they refuse to give uncertainty another year. Stay till the end. Because this is the moment the story changes. They pressed send. One small movement. One message crossing the distance between two lives. After 9 years. The screen changed. Sent. And suddenly the person known by millions felt completely powerless. They could control schedules. They could approve projects. They could walk onto stages knowing thousands were waiting. But they could not control your answer. And strangely, that was exactly what made this moment real. They placed the phone face down. 10 seconds later, they checked it. Nothing. 30 seconds. Nothing. 2 minutes. Nothing. They told themselves to stop looking. Then looked again. Nothing. The waiting began. And every minute seemed longer than the previous one. People entered with questions. They barely heard them. Calls arrived. They postponed one. Then another. Someone asked whether everything was okay. Yes. But their eyes kept moving toward the phone. Because for the first time in years, the most important thing happening in their life was completely invisible to the public. No journalist knew. No fan knew. No interviewer knew. No crowd knew. Somewhere, perhaps without realizing it yet, you had become the center of a moment that millions of people could never see. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Hours passed. Still nothing. And this was when doubt returned. Maybe the contact information was wrong. Maybe the message had disappeared among others. Maybe you had seen the name and decided not to respond. Maybe you had finally learned to live without needing an explanation. That possibility hurt. But they accepted it. Because choosing someone does not guarantee being chosen in return. They understood that. And this time, they would not manipulate the outcome. They would wait. They would respect your space. They had spoken. The next move belonged to you. Night came. The city outside became quieter. They sat near the same window where the decision had begun. The phone remained nearby. Still nothing. One trusted friend called. Any answer? No. You okay? A long pause. Then, I think so. Another pause. At least they know now. Those words were important. At least they know now. After 9 years, the truth no longer existed only inside one person's mind. The door had been opened. Whatever happened next, silence had finally lost its power. The celebrity went to sleep late. Or tried to. But sometime after midnight, the phone lit up. A notification appeared. Their eyes opened. For a moment, they simply stared at the glow across the dark room. Their hearts started racing before they even reached for it. They sat up. Picked up the phone. Unlocked the screen. And froze. Your name. After 9 years. Your name was there. A reply. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Because the words inside that reply were not what they expected. They opened the message slowly. The first line made them stop breathing for a second. Not because it was cruel. Not because it was angry. Because it confirmed something they had secretly wondered for almost a decade. You remembered too. The message was careful. Measured. You were not throwing yourself into an old story. You were not pretending 9 years had not happened. You were protecting the person you had become. But beneath that caution was something unmistakable. Recognition. Memory. A door that was not completely closed. They read your response once. Then twice. Then a third time. And for the first time that night, they smiled. Not the polished smile everyone recognized. A quiet smile. Almost disbelieving. They whispered. They answered. 3 ordinary words. Yet to them, it felt larger than an arena chanting their name. Because applause comes from admiration. This came from someone whose opinion mattered differently. The conversation did not suddenly become a fairy tale. And that is what made it meaningful. You asked questions. Difficult ones. Why now? Why after 9 years? Why had they never spoken? Why should you believe this was real? Those questions did not push them away. They respected them. Because you deserved answers. So they began giving them. Not all at once. Slowly. Honestly. They told you about fear. About timing. About the strange pressure that arrived as their public life expanded. About how every year made reaching out feel harder because the silence itself became something that needed explaining. They admitted mistakes. They did not hide behind fame. They did not say their career made everything acceptable. They simply told the truth. I was afraid. Those words surprised you. Because the world-famous person everyone viewed as fearless was admitting that one private conversation had frightened them more than any public stage. And then came another confession. I thought about you more often than you would believe. Stay till the end. Because the conversation that followed began revealing the 9-year secret. There had been moments when they almost contacted you. A birthday. A familiar song. A place that reminded them of an old conversation. A photograph found unexpectedly. A night when success should have made them feel complete but somehow reminded them of everything that had been left unfinished. Each time, they came close. Each time, fear won. Until now. You asked. What changed? The answer did not arrive immediately. They typed. Deleted. Typed again. Finally. I realized I could have everything I once wanted and still regret never telling you the truth. You stared at those words. And somewhere inside the silence between two screens, 9 years suddenly felt very present. Something huge is waiting for you. Because there was still one truth they had not revealed. The biggest one. The reason this was not merely nostalgia. The reason they had finally decided they could no longer remain silent. Days before contacting you, something had happened. Something private. Something that forced them to think about the future. They had attended a gathering surrounded by people they had known for years. The conversation eventually turned toward relationships, family, home, and the strange speed of time. Someone jokingly asked the celebrity, "With all the people you've met, how have you never found the one person who makes you stop looking?" Everyone laughed. But the celebrity did not. Because a name immediately appeared in their mind. Yours. That frightened them. Not because they disliked the answer. Because the answer came too quickly. 9 years. Countless people. Entire worlds crossed. And still, when asked who made them stop searching emotionally, their mind returned to you. Later that night, they stood alone and admitted something they had avoided for years. Maybe they had not been unable to choose. Maybe they had chosen long ago and simply never had the courage to say it. Don't skip. Because this is the difference between the story everyone would assume and the story actually unfolding. It was never. A celebrity can have anyone, and they chose you. Human beings are not prizes. Love is not a competition. The deeper truth was this. After years of being surrounded by attention, this person finally understood the difference between being admired and being known. And they remembered feeling known by you. That was what they were choosing. Not perfection. Not fantasy. Not possession. Truth. Peace. Recognition. The possibility of being seen without performing. As your conversation continued over the following days, something unexpected happened. The celebrity started becoming nervous about ordinary things. What should they say next? Were they messaging too often? Too little? Would a joke still make you laugh? Did you remember certain details? It almost felt like those 9 years had disappeared. Except they had not. And neither of you pretended otherwise. There were wounds created by silence. Questions created by absence. Lives that had evolved independently. Those things mattered. But something else mattered too. Both of you were still talking. And then, late one evening, they sent a message that changed the tone completely. "Can I ask you something without you thinking I've lost my mind?" You smiled at the screen. You answered. Ask. Several minutes passed. Then came. If I had told you 9 years ago how I felt, what would you have said? Your heart paused. Because suddenly the past was sitting directly in front of you. You could have avoided it. You could have changed the subject. Instead, you answered honestly. And your answer stunned them. Because you told them that 9 years ago. You had felt something too. The phone nearly slipped from their hand. They stood up. Walked across the room. Read your message again. 9 years of wondering suddenly had an answer. It had not been imagined. It had not been one-sided. There really had been something. And both of you had allowed fear and circumstance to leave it unnamed. They laughed once, but there was emotion beneath it. 9 years, they whispered. 9 years. Then they sent. Why didn't you tell me? Your reply came. Why didn't you tell me? And suddenly both of you were laughing. Not because 9 lost years were funny, but because sometimes life reveals how similar two people's fears had been all along. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because the next question was no longer about 9 years ago. It was about now. They asked. Do you think it's too late? This time, you did not answer immediately. And that silence frightened them more than anything before it. Minutes passed. Then your reply appeared. I don't know. Not yes. Not no. I don't know. And strangely, they accepted it. Because it was honest. They responded. Then let me earn the chance to find out. That was different. There was no demand. No grand promise. No pressure. Just willingness. Over the following days, their actions began matching those words. They showed up consistently. They listened. They remembered what you said. They did not use their status to overwhelm you. They did not try to turn the story into something public. They protected it. Because this connection had survived 9 years inside silence. They were not going to destroy it with noise. Then came the invitation. Not to a glamorous event. Not to a red carpet. Not somewhere filled with cameras. Somewhere quiet. Private. Simple. They wanted to see you. Face to face. After 9 years. The message arrived late in the evening. You read it repeatedly. Your heart knew what the invitation represented. This was no longer two people speaking through memories. If you accepted, the past and present would finally meet. You typed an answer. Deleted it. Typed again. And somewhere far away, one of the most recognized people in the world was staring at a screen, waiting for one person to decide whether they would walk through a door. Your door. Your decision. Your choice. And that is where the deepest truth of this story begins. Because while everyone else might focus on the celebrity, the fame, or the extraordinary circumstances, the real story is about something much more human. Two people. 9 years. One unfinished truth. And one final chance to discover whether what survived the silence could survive reality. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Because when you finally sent your answer, they read it once and immediately stood from their chair. You had written. Yes. We can meet. And at that exact moment, everything changed. The meeting was arranged quietly. No cameras. No public announcement. No entourage filling the room. They wanted to arrive as themselves. Not as the person on screens. Not as the name known around the world. Just the person who had waited 9 years too long to say what should have been said. And when the day finally arrived, they reached the meeting place early. Far too early. They checked the time repeatedly. Adjusted their clothes. Sat down. Stood again. Walked toward the window. Returned to the chair. It was almost unbelievable. Someone who could command the attention of thousands was nervous about one person's footsteps approaching a door. Then those footsteps came. Slowly. Closer. Closer. The door opened. And there you were. 9 years older. Different. Familiar. Real. For several seconds, neither of you spoke. They looked at you as though every memory they had carried had suddenly stepped into the room. You looked at them and saw something the world rarely saw. Not the celebrity. Not the image. Not the confidence. The nervous person underneath. Their eyes softened. A small smile appeared. And the first words they said after 9 years of silence were not dramatic. They were simply, "I can't believe you're really here." You smiled. And something shifted. The years between you did not disappear. But they stopped feeling like a wall. They became a bridge. A story. A distance both of you had somehow crossed. You sat down. And then came the conversation that would decide everything. Because there was one final confession they had not yet made. One reason they had asked to meet privately. One decision they had already made before you walked through that door. They looked directly into your eyes. The nervous smile disappeared. Their voice became serious. And they said, "There's something I need to tell you that I couldn't put in a message." Your heart tightened. The room became completely still. They leaned forward slightly. 9 years of silence were about to become one sentence. And what they said next would reveal why, after meeting countless people, traveling across the world, living beneath unimaginable attention, and having almost every door open to them, they had finally come back to yours. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Because the biggest revelation has not happened yet. Something huge is waiting for you.